Xiaoyang gazed south, toward legendary Middle-earth. The northern border had become too small for him. "The time for games is over," he said, his voice carrying on the mountain wind. "It's time to see if the gods themselves can bleed." He stepped into the air, the black python rising from the mist to meet him. Behind him, he left the wreckage of the Qingyang sword sect and the weeping, broken figure of the girl he had once loved. The fourth arc ended not with a victory march, but with a declaration of war against the heavens. He was Xiaoyang, the man who refused to be a holy son, and he was finally, truly, moving toward the peak of the world, taking the hearts of the powerful and the lives of the arrogant with him. The journey into Middle-earth beckoned, and the world was about to learn that when a man is reborn for revenge, even the immortals are not safe. The transition from the rugged northern border to the staggering opulence of Middle-earth was like stepping from a candle-lit room into the full, blinding radiance of a celestial sun. Here, the spiritual energy didn't just drift in the air. It pulsed through the earth like a living heartbeat, a dense, intoxicating golden mist that made every breath feel like a draught of divine wine. Every mountain was a jagged tooth of pure jade, and every river flowed with the clarity of liquid crystal, reflecting a sky that seemed to be held up by the golden spires of the immortal sect. Xiaoyang stood at the border of this new world, his black robes a dark blemish against the perfection of the landscape. He felt the Zixiao immortal sword on his back, vibrating with a restless, ancestral recognition. He wasn't here to admire the scenery. He was here as a man seeking the truth of a bloodline that had been denied to him for 2 lifetimes, a man coming to reclaim a mother he had never known. His investigation into his origins first led him to a secluded pavilion overlooking a literal sea of clouds, where he sought out Master Feng Xuan. She was a woman of sharp intellect and even sharper sword skills, a contemporary of the legendary Minghua Holy Maiden. When she saw him, she nearly dropped her jade teacup, her hands trembling as she looked at his face. You look so much like her," Feng Xuan whispered, her voice a fragile thing. She stepped closer, her eyes scanning his features with a mix of grief and wonder. "Minghua was the heart of our generation, the most brilliant star of the immortal sect. To see her eyes looking back at me from your face, it feels like a ghost has returned to haunt this golden cage." Xiaoyang didn't flinch. "I am no ghost, Master Feng Xuan. I am the son she was forced to abandon. Tell me where they keep her. Tell me why the immortal sect treats her name like a curse." Feng Xuan sighed, a heavy sound that seemed to age her 10 years. "They keep her in the immortal prison, Xiaoyang. They call her a traitor for the crime of loving a man from the mortal dust. But the truth is far darker. She discovered the secret of the immortal lord, a secret that would burn this entire sect to the ground." The bond between them shifted that night, in the quiet of the garden, amidst the blooming moonflowers that smelled of sweet nectar and rain. Master Feng Xuan surrendered her long-held solitude. She saw in Xiaoyang the strength her friend had once possessed, combined with a ruthless, dark edge that was entirely his own. The intimacy between them was a mature, soulful fire, a promise of loyalty born of shared history and a desperate hope for the future. As they lay together under the starlit canopy, the physical union was a silent oath. Feng Xuan realized that she wasn't just helping a friend's son. She was binding her fate to a man who had the power to break the world. By dawn, she carried the first spark of his legacy within her, a secret that would soon bind her irrevocably to his cause. But the search for his mother required him to go deeper into the heart of the enemy. Xiaoyang infiltrated the forbidden grounds of the immortal sect, eventually reaching the celestial spring of the sun and moon. This was a sanctuary filled with the heavy scent of spirit lilies and a thick, humid mist that clung to the skin like a second layer of silk. It was here that he found the woman who reigned at the pinnacle of Middle-earth's hierarchy, the Saint Queen of the immortal sect. She sat at the edge of the spring, her flowing white silks partially discarded, her pale skin glowing with an ethereal porcelain light in the steam. But the queen was not in a state of peace. She was in the throes of a violent cultivation deviation, her saintly heart wavering under the pressure of suppressed desires and chaotic qi. When she saw Xiaoyang, she didn't call the guards. Her eyes, usually as cold as mountain ice, were clouded with a dark, predatory fire. "You, the bastard of Minghua," she hissed, her voice a ragged, breathless sound. She stood, the water cascading down the breathtaking curves of her body as the last of her robes fell away. Driven by the frenzy of her failing chi, she was no longer an empress, but a woman possessed by a primal need. You have your mother's eyes. They were always too full of life, too full of fire. Since you have come to claim your inheritance, take the burden of mine. She was upon him in a blur of motion, her superior speed fueled by the madness of her deviation. The St. Queen incident was a violent, passionate collision that shattered centuries of forced celibacy. She pinned Xiaoyang against the warm jade walls of the spring, her fingers digging into his shoulders as she forced him into a dual cultivation that was more akin to a battle than a union. The air in the chamber became thick with the scent of their shared heat and the musk of raw exertion. In the shimmering water, the contrast between Xiaoyang's rugged, battle-scarred frame and the queen's ethereal, pale form was stark. The physical intimacy was an explosion of raw power, a mature, Eki-infused exchange where the queen used him as a vessel to vent her chaotic energy. Her cold arrogance melted into desperate, rhythmic cries that echoed through the golden arches of the sanctuary. Xiaoyang didn't just endure, he dominated the encounter, his level 10 sword intent acting as a leash on her wild chi. By the time the morning light touched the spring, the untouchable empress lay exhausted and broken in his arms, her spirit finally stabilized and carrying the seeds of a child that would eventually claim the throne of the immortal sect. Xiaoyang's journey then took him to the hedonistic depths of the Heihuan sect, a place where the air was a constant, shimmering mist of aphrodisiacal herbs, and the sound of soft laughter echoed behind translucent silk hangings. The founder of the Heihuan sect, an ancient beauty who wore only the thinnest of veils, invited him to her palace of eternal joy. She reclined on a bed of crimson fur, her eyes tracing the hard lines of his body with a hunger that was both professional and primal. "The unfettered sword god," she purred, her fan brushing against his chest, her touch a teasing electric current. "I have tasted the vitality of 1,000 geniuses, but none who smell of the heavens as you do. Come, let me show you why they call me the Queen of the Night. I shall drain the very soul from your bones and leave you begging for more." She intended to use her perfected arts of the bedchamber to consume him, but she underestimated the sheer potency of Xiaoyang's reborn soul. In the lush, dimly lit depths of the palace, the hunter became the prey. Xiaoyang turned her own dual cultivation techniques against her, his stamina and spiritual depth overwhelming the founder. The encounter was a masterpiece of mature, Eki passion. The room was filled with the rhythmic sound of their union and the founder's growing, sobbing realization of her own defeat. She was reduced to a shivering mess of pleasure as Xiaoyang took absolute control of the night. By dawn, the woman who had manipulated the hearts of kings was a woman obsessed, her body and spirit fundamentally altered by the experience. Like the others, she found herself bound to him by the consequence of their night. She was pregnant with his heir. Even the pure Yaoguang saintess, the most talented of the inner sect geniuses, could not resist the gravitational pull of his fate. They found themselves alone in the Library of Lost Stars, a chamber where ancient books floated in a vacuum of spiritual energy. "They told me you were a demon," she whispered, her voice a tiny, trembling thing as she touched the hilt of his Zixiao sword. "But your chi, it doesn't feel like darkness. It feels like the sun." Xiaoyang pulled her into his embrace, his hands tracing the lines of her pristine robes until they fell to the floor like autumn leaves. "The sun burns as often as it warms, Saintess. Are you ready to be burned?" Their union in the library was a mixture of frantic desperation and fated attraction. She was a woman who had realized her entire life in the sect was built on a lie, and in the shadow of that betrayal, she gave herself to the only truth she had found. The shared heat of their cultivation and the physical manifestation of her total surrender added a layer of deep, mature complexity to the story. She, too, would carry his mark into the coming war. Amidst these intense physical unions, the true, horrifying secret of the immortal sect was finally laid bare. Xiaoyang cornered a high elder in the depths of the archives, his sword at the man's throat. "Tell me the secret of the immortal gate," he roared, his purple chi flaring like a localized storm. The elder, trembling in the face of certain death, confessed the truth. The immortal lord was a cosmic parasite. He had been using the immortal gate to drain the vital energy and the luck of every high-ranking cultivator within the sect to prolong his own life and facilitate his own ascension. Xiao Yang's mother, the Minghua Holy Maiden, had discovered this truth years ago. Her crime was not a forbidden love, but her attempt to warn the world of the monster sitting on the golden throne. Xiao Yang's resolve turned to iron. He wasn't just fighting for a mother he had never met. He was fighting for the harem of powerful women who now followed him, the Saint Queen, Master Feng Xuan, the Heiwan founder, and the Yao Guang Saintess. They were a force that the world had never seen. A group of legendary beauties, all martial masters in their own right, all bound to one man not just by loyalty, but by the literal blood of his unborn children. The Eki and mature elements of their journey had forged a bond that no sect could break a legacy. The arc reached its boiling point as Xiao Yang prepared to storm the immortal prison. He stood at the gates of the black stone fortress, the air crackling with the lightning of his Zixiao sword. He turned to the Saint Queen who stood beside him, her belly just beginning to show the slight curve of her pregnancy. "If I do not return," he began, but she silenced him with a firm, warm hand on his chest. "You will return," she said, her eyes now filled with a fierce, protective love that had replaced her cold arrogance. "I will not let my child grow up without a father to teach him how to break the world." Xiao Yang nodded, his gaze returning to the prison gates. He was no longer a rogue or a holy son. He was the father of a new age, a man who had used the most primal and the most divine forces of the world to build a throne. "Today," he shouted, his voice echoing through the golden valleys of Middle-earth, "we don't just rescue a mother, we kill a god."